So yeah, and it's 11:03. I think we are good to start now, if everyone agrees with me.
Yeah. Just to let you guys know as well, we'll be publishing out the slides, so you don't have to write down on the notes if you don't want to, because we will send it out to you later.
Okay. Before starting, Lauren wrote that the Mentee sign up link won't work for them. If you email us at our email, In2MedSchool@gmail.com, we will then email you the Google form, just so you can sign up from there. All right, let's start. So hi everybody, and thank you so much for joining us in our first webinar, the BMAT training webinar. Today, I will be joined by Charmaine and Rehaan, who are two of our mentors from this amazing project called In2MedSchool. So who are we and what do we do? In2MedSchool is a group of more than 1,500 student mentors from all over the UK. And we offer free mentoring sessions to disadvantaged students from year 12 and year 13 that wish to study medicine just like us. We offer many things, amongst which there's one-on-one mentoring sessions, online webinars, and many educational resources that will help you make the most out of your medical school application. Today, we will be running this BMAT webinar. Don't worry about taking notes, etc., because we will be sending the slides to everyone that is here, as long as you guys fill our pre-webinar and post-webinar questionnaires. And you should have received the links to that. If not, please email us at In2MedSchool@gmail.com, and we will make sure to send it to you. Today you can use the Q&A function and the chat function. Please make the most of them. They will be monitored, so please avoid writing anything inappropriate, because we will ignore those comments. As I said, this webinar will be recorded. And also throughout the Zoom webinar, there will be some polls for you guys. Please make the most of them. It would be very beneficial for you to interact. So as I said, today I will be joined by Rehaan and Charmaine, who are both mentors as well as leads for their medical schools for our In2MedSchool project. Charmaine is also in the event committee with me, and Rehaan is lead for the educational and teaching resources. Charmaine is a second year at Cardiff, and Rehaan is a second year at Newcastle University. So yeah, I welcome them and I thank them for taking the time to explain to you guys some hints and tips to succeed in your BMAT exam. So please go for it, guys.
Hey, lovely. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Anna. So today, firstly, welcome to our webinar, and we're going to start off with a pre-webinar mini mock. Now, we sent out the emails about this mock questions before, so hopefully you guys had a look at it, and we'll now just go through some of the questions, and there'll be a poll coming up. So we'll give you about 30 seconds for you to choose your answer.
You guys are very fast, oh my God.
That's good, that's good.
Good sign, yeah.
Yeah.
And 30 seconds have passed. So I've now ended the poll. Perfect.
Can I see the results for the poll?
Yes, this is what we got.
You.
Okay, interesting.
Interesting. And the next question.
This is quite a fun question.
Don't worry if you guys can't answer the question, or if you're not sure which one the right one is, just take a guess, because we will go through these questions later on after each section.
And time is up. And this is the results we got. Majority of people put down E.
Okay.
Next question, guys. And time is up. Majority of people put down B.
Okay. And the last question.
And time is now up, and this is the results.
Okay. Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. So this was the essay question that we gave you. And I think what we're going to do is that we will discuss the answers about this later on. Rehaan, would you like to ask them to put the answers into the chat later on in section 3?
Yeah, so when we go on to this question in section 3, then just submit some answers in the chat and we'll discuss through them. So don't worry about it for now. Yeah?
Perfect, yeah. Okay, let's start. So today I'll be talking you through to section 1. And section 1 is all about thinking skills. So the overview of this component of the exam is just 32 multiple choice questions. You've got 2 types of questions that will ask: problem solving questions and critical thinking. Problem solving is mainly diagrams, graphs, a lot of numbers included. And then you've got critical thinking, where they'll give you a bunch of text and you need to read through and answer the question from there. So it's a lot similar to verbal reasoning in the UCAT section. And you have 60 minutes to answer all the questions, as each question has 5 options. So in my opinion, for thinking skills, section 1, you can't really study for it. There's no fixed syllabus like how you would have it for section 2 in the sciences. I think big thing that I want to emphasize is just you need to keep on practicing. Be comfortable with reading really quick, answering the questions, and finding a way to tackle these questions that fits your style. So when I practice, what I did was that for critical thinking questions, so the one with the long text, I would read the question first, then read the passage, and then read through the answer options. Whereas for problem solving, what I do is I look at the answer options and look what the question is asked, then go back to the data given. So it's a lot easier and a lot faster to just look through all the information really quick and then use more of that time to work out which one the right and appropriate answer is. And as I said earlier, it's very similar to the verbal reasoning UCAT section. So this is a checklist that I thought would be very useful while practicing for section 1. Definitely read through the question guide. It gives you all the styles of questions that they're going to ask you, what you need to do for preparation before the actual exam. Familiarize yourself with the style of questions given. So each, let's say critical thinking, there's about 5 to 6 different types of questions that they can ask you. And we'll give you a bunch of resources later on in the PowerPoint, where there's a really good website that has already helped you separate the type of questions that they ask in each section. Create a timetable for revision. You need to be pretty consistent with your time and just tell yourself every day, okay, I need to practice maybe this number of questions every single day. They usually tell you to start around 2 months before the actual day to start practicing. So I would say maybe just try and attempt a few questions every day just to keep on going at it. Because the more you do it, the more familiarized you're going to get yourself with the questions, the faster you get to think and be like, oh, okay, I get that. And definitely use the practice papers. I would say the practice papers from 2003 to 2019 are probably the most appropriate ones. The one that suits the current papers, because they're also the most recent ones. So I would say try and get through all of those first before the actual BMAT test. So this was a revision timetable that I created, which I think you guys can use it as a template if you want. So over here, you've got all the dates, so every day, and then you've got the number of questions. So critical thinking, maybe on Monday, okay, I'll do 10 critical thinking questions, and then I'll do 10 problem solving questions. So Monday to Friday, you're doing practice questions every single day. And then on Saturday, what I would do is that I'll do my mock paper. And if I feel confident that I know the style questions, I would do it under a time condition. And hence you've got a slot here, a column here to just put the time that you've taken to do the paper. And then I'll take Sunday as a rest day where I just review what I got wrong and what I should improve for the next time. So like maybe something like, oh, okay, I need to read faster, or I need to spend more time on these style of questions. And then the whole cycle repeats again. As I said, be consistent revision. Definitely practice skim reading. As most of you guys would have done the UCAT verbal reasoning section already, and you know how difficult it is to just keep on reading through the whole paragraph, and you've got like so many different questions that you're going to finish in that time. So again, I think just keep on practicing, and yeah, if you find any questions that you think are really difficult, if you want, you can always reflect back on those and then just try and go through, find different questions that are in a similar style and practice on them. So here are the official guidelines that I took from the official BMAT guide. So read section 1 question guide, download the practice papers with the explained answers. Really helpful, just keep on going through them. Look through what are the different styles that they've asked throughout the past years. And try doing some of them under test conditions. Like I said, record your time, see how it goes. Now, your year is going to be the first year where the BMAT is now online due to COVID. And so it's going to be quite different. So section 1 now does not contain the data analysis interference questions. So that used to be a style question where they give you a really long text, and then you've got about 4 to 5 questions after that text that's related to the passage. And so they've cut that out now, which means you have less questions to answer, you have more time, and you should be able to finish most of them in the 60 minutes that are given to you. Okay, so here are just some top tips that we gave for you. We found that the OCR A-level critical thinking papers 2 and 3 were really good for practice, and there's a link in here that you can get to find it. I put in the link as well for the guidelines to look at the style of questions that they ask you and what are the tips that the official guidelines have given you. I would say the best thing to do is that when you're practicing, try and find a strategy that really works for you. Everyone has a different style of how they want to work through questions and how they think through it. So when you practice, you start to find what actually works for you and what makes you basically be able to answer the question really quickly and be like, okay, I get that. And again, practice. I don't think I can emphasize it enough. Like section 1 is the one section that there's nothing to memorize because it's not the same every year. So you just need to keep on going through these questions and get familiarized with it. So here are some additional resources that we think could be useful for you when you're practicing the section 1. So Blackstone Tutor's BMAT, I think, was really impressive because what they did is that on their website, when you go to their free BMAT resources, everything is free, you don't have to pay for it. What they've done is that for critical thinking questions, they separated, so like flaws, describe or like evaluate, or there's like different categories that they've split it into. And what they've done is that, let's say for critical thinking question flaws, they collected all those style of questions from the past papers and put it in one folder for you, which I think is very convenient, because if you find a specific type of question that you know you're not particularly good at, you can easily go into the folder and find all the style questions from don't know how many different years that they collected from. Other resources like Physics Maths Tutor, Medic Portal is really good as well. They give a lot of tips and advice that you can use. YouTube, like Ali Abdel, Kama Medic, they're also really good for revision. I use the ISC BMAT 700 question book. It's a pretty thick book, but the questions in there are really good if you want to basically start from like the most difficult level, because I'd rather be more prepared than underprepared for an exam like this. And it's definitely a very highly recommended book that you should get if you want to, I guess, practice more. Medify as well, and then the OCR A-level resources. Okay, so now we're gonna go through the questions that we gave you at the start before the webinar started. So question 1. Recent research has found a surprising correlation between how women rate the physical attractiveness of male competitive cyclists and their overall performance in an endurance race, with those comparators rated most attractive finishing ahead of those rated less attractive. It seems that women are less sensitive to those physical traits that relate to cycling excellence and unwittingly factor this into how attractive they find a particular participant. Therefore, it would follow that attractive male film stars and models are likely to make successful cyclists. Which one of the following best expresses the flaw in the above passage? And the answer was A, which majority of you got right. Now, why? So A is the best response as it directly addressed the conclusion in the passage, as attractiveness correlates with physical performance. And A is also the best because it shows that there are other potential factors leading to success in sports. Therefore, the best flaw is expressed. Because A says the study did not suggest attractiveness alone is sufficient to ensure success, which is not true, because they didn't actually say that in the passage. As for the other options, so let's say, for example, E, the findings of the study may not be repeated in the future. They never say anything about that. There's nothing about repeated experiments or anything in the passage. So you know that's not even true. And then the results of this study may not be generalizable to all sports. Now, they only talked about how cycling and attractiveness to male film stars and models. So they didn't involve anything about other sports. And so hence why A is probably most related, but also has the best expresses the flaw in the passage. And section 1 for the second question. My 6-digit passcode for internet banking consists of 6 different digits. The second digit is 8. When the passcode is written as 3 2-digit numbers, the 3 numbers add up to 80. When it is written as 2 3-digit numbers, the 2 numbers add up to 800. What is the last digit of my passcode? So just now in the poll, a lot of you put E, and that's wrong. So those of you who did get 7, that's the right answer. So let's work through how we actually got through that. Okay, so we've got 6 digits, and it's A. They just put it out in order A, and you know second digit is 8, and then C, X, Y, and Z. So if you've got 2 3-digit numbers that plus together and you get 800, and that's how you write out the first formula. And then you've got 3 2-digit numbers that then add up to 80, and that gives you your second equation here. So the first equation, you know that C and Z must be equal to 10, because in 800 the last digit is 0. So therefore, C and Z must be either 7 plus 3 or 6 plus 4. And that also means that Y must be equal to 1, because that's the one that's carried along from the in the sum from the end. And so A and X must be either 5 and 2. Well, it doesn't really matter which order it is, because then you know that A plus X must be equal to 8, because it's 800 here. So 5 plus 2 is equal to 7, and then you plus 1, because of it, 1 has been carried over from before, and therefore it's equal to 8. So then 8 plus X plus Z must be equal to a digit that ends with 0, because it's 80. And so you cannot be 10, because 1 has already been used by Y, and therefore it has to be 20. So X plus Z plus 8 equals to 20, and then 20 minus 8, you get 12. So X plus Z must be equal to 12. And you know that Z has to either be 7, 3, 6, or 4. And only 7 plus 5 is equal to 12. Now the 5 comes from the A plus X, where it's either 5 or 2. And so since only 7 plus 5 is equal to 12, Z must be equal to 7, and X must be equal to 5. And hence, last digit of the passcode, which is Z, is equal to 7. All right, so now that's the end of section 1, and I will stop sharing my screen and pass on to my colleague Rehaan.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So let's move on. 1 second. Okay, so now we're going to look at section 2, which is the science and maths section effectively. So looking at a bit of an overview of what the section is, there's 27 multiple choice questions, which we've done in 30 minutes. So obviously this is online, so you will have 30 minutes timed online to do the 27 questions. It will test the basic principles of biology, chemistry, physics, and maths. The level of demand is somewhere between GCSE and AS level. So it's a bit harder than GCSE, but it's not as hard as AS level. So don't sort of worry that, oh, if I don't have maths or physics, I can't do this, because a lot of the applicants won't. The majority of applicants have biology and chemistry, and sometimes you'll have maths. Very, very few have physics. So it's a good idea to start preparing physics first when you go along with this. So the most important thing to remember about this section is that it's not just about recall of information. Rather, the BMAT is a test of application of knowledge. So you need to know the basic principles, retain them, memorize them, bring them back in the exam, but then apply them to some often challenging and different contexts. But that's the most important part of this section. So it's why it could be considered the hardest part, but it's all about application of knowledge. So how do you go about preparing for this section? Well, here's a little checklist that I've made. So this is sort of how I went around doing it. So you need to read through the section 2 guide that they have on the BMAT website, then read through the specification that's also there, and that will tell you the different topics to revise. And a good thing to do is just sort of print it out and go through and like rate your confidence for each of the topics. So like smiley faces or like a scale to 1 to 5 or whatever. And then based on that, create a revision timetable sort of. So I've put over summer because ideally you'll be preparing from them, but just even now you've got enough time till November to make a revision timetable. And it's really good to start revising physics first, because that's the thing that majority of people will not be doing currently and what they would have forgot from GCSE. So begin with physics, then go on to the parts of chemistry and biology that you struggle with. So in terms of how you actually address and relearn the content, well, you've got your old textbooks you can use. There's so many resources online. There's lots of YouTube videos as well. There's lots of different websites and so on where you can use to get sort of the information necessary. And then produce notes to then learn all the information. And then start practicing with a few GCSE papers just to sort of test the waters, and then begin practicing with the official BMAT papers and other resources that are available. So the official guidance, again, this is just sort of rehashing what I've talked about. So again, they've suggested that you look through the specification, and you look through sort of their guide that they've produced, you practice using the papers they've given, and then sort of review the papers, mark them, and look at the gaps in your knowledge and work on those areas. So here's an example of revision timetable that I made when I was preparing for the BMAT. So as you can see here, I've got lots of different colour because it just helps me. So I've got the different topics of maths that I was doing on these days, and sort of in yellow, I had the parts that I had to focus on a bit more. And I've got, you know, other things in green, and then regularly I sort of test myself. So I do an algebra and surds test, and then again I do a surds test, and I have things on like midpoints and trajectory, and then I did a graphs exam, and I have days where I've taken breaks as well, just to sort of obviously, you know, manage my time and, you know, relax as well from what I'm doing. But it's not too bad if you just have this sort of time to running along. So you doesn't mean that you'd just be doing maths during this time or just section 2. This would be just your section 2 timetable, and then you'd have a section 1 timetable similar to what Charm showed before for those days as well. So some top tips for this section. It's a good idea to read the specification and the guide. It's a good idea to write up good quality notes based on that and picking the topics specifically that you're not sure about. There's no point making notes on what a cell looks like, because we all know what a cell looks like. There's no point focusing on that. Rather focus on the things like circuits, which a lot of people forget from GCSE physics. In terms of how you retain the information, flashcards are the best way. So you can use flashcards, posters, mind maps, etc. to try and remember the concepts that you're struggling with, or just, you know, to summarize them. Another thing that I did is that I made 1-page memory sheets, which is basically just a way to condense the content. So on 1 page, I'd summarize an entire topic and then just have that page and print that out. So I'd make that online and print that out so I can learn the content. It's important that you regularly practice questions, okay? The only way in which you'll get better at the BMAT is by practicing. Because again, as I said before, it's not a test of knowledge, it's a test of application of knowledge. So the only way you get better at application is by practicing constantly. And then number 6 is memorize the physics equations. They won't give you the physics equations, so please make sure you learn all the different equations. They're all in the specification. So speaking of equations, these are some really, really good equations to remember, okay? So it can be very difficult to remember all the power, voltage, current, and resistance equations and how they all link together, and you can feel a bit swamped. But this little wheel is something that I definitely memorized. I printed this out and stuck it on my wall, and I made sure I went through that nearly every day while I was preparing, and I still know this by heart and draw this out. It's really, really good. This was such a useful wheel to remember how to convert between power, voltage, current, and resistance. And I can guarantee you there will definitely be questions on the circuits area there. CUVAT equation is also really, really good to remember. They can be quite challenging to rearrange, but it does not require much brain power to just retain all of these sort of sets of equations as well. The 5 that here and then what they stand for. So these are some really, really good things to remember, as well as the other physics equations that are listed in the specification that you need to remember. So here's some pictures of notes that I took when I was doing the BMAT. So again, I used colour, but that's just because I like using colour, but it did help me a lot. And again, I only wrote notes on topics that I can't remember or I needed more practice with. So here I've got stuff on redshift and spectrums and how wavelengths change, stuff on circuits, and sort of understanding how voltage changes happen, current and resistance, and then some stuff on refraction and so on. Okay, so it's really good to take good quality notes and make them concise and well presented as well. Talked about memory sheets before, so here's an example of a memory sheet I made on the motion and energy topic. So this is everything that I need to know in the BMAT specification on motion and energy, and I did all of that just on one page, and I summarized that, printed that out, stuck it on my wall, and occasionally when I'm walking in my room or I'm just practicing questions, I just look at that, read through that again to try and retain it. But it's a really good idea to make sheets like these because it will be very helpful. So in terms of resources, so I also use the ICS 700 BMAT question book, as Charm said. Again, it's quite a thick book, but it's very, very useful to do. We've got the official BMAT practice papers from 2003 all the way to 2019, which are useful. This is quite a good book, the BMAT past paper work solution book. So the mark schemes of the BMAT papers will just tell you if the option was A or D or E or F. They won't tell you how to get the answer. And sometimes you might not understand, I don't get how on earth the answer is D and why is it not B? And you might not know anyone who can explain that to you. Well, this book is honestly the holy grail, especially section 2 of BMAT, where you do need to sort of understand why an answer is a certain thing. Because it just works through the options and it tells you why it's not these and then it is this. So that's a really, really good book. So I definitely recommend getting that. There's also Medify and things like BMAT Ninja you can use if you want to pay some money from them. Again, GCSE textbooks, you know, it's no harder than GCSE generally, the content. Maths, you need to get lots of maths papers to practice, physics and maths tutor, and also YouTube. So free science lessons is a great resource to use, so you can just look through the content again. So YouTube can often make the content a bit too simple, but it's good to get a baseline knowledge and then develop on that using other reading and the specification. So in the pre-webinar questions, I gave you this here. So it was about the nth term of a sequence and you needing to write an expression for the difference between that. So if we talk through the answer is B for this, which I think most people put. So let's have a look at how you actually get B. It's actually quite a simple question. So all you need to do is write an expression for the difference between the n+1th term and the nth term, right? So that just means I need to have a minus sign because I'm trying to find the difference. So then I write that as a fraction, obviously, because I know that the nth term is n over n+1. So I just sort of substitute that in. So that's n+1 over n+2 minus n over n+1. And I summarize my fraction, sort of taking away, simplify that. So n+1 bracket, n+1 close bracket, minus n bracket, n+2 close bracket over n+2, n+1, which is just these two parts there. Now just expand the brackets, make it into a quadratic, n squared plus 2n+1 minus n squared minus 2n over n+2 plus n+1, and then simplify 1 over n+2, n+1. So not hard at all, just a simple step-by-step method. Someone I think was asking before in the Q&A, do you get working out paper? I think you do get some form of, like in the UCAT, you get like a whiteboard. I think you will get some sort of thing like that to work this out. But this is not in if you don't. You can sort of easily do some of these steps in your head. But I'm pretty confident you will get some form of paper to work things out on. The next question was this physics question here, which is on circuits, which is a bit more challenging. And this is a really good question because it sort of epitomizes what I said before about how the BMAT is not a test of knowledge, it is a test of application. And this is a question that tests application very well. So we are given a circuit, okay, and we're told that the battery will supply a voltage of 12 volts constantly. Great, okay, so I can see that I've got 3 resistors, X, Y, and Z, fantastic. So when the switch is open, as shown, the current in resistor Y is 20, right, brilliant. And then when we close the switch, we need to work out the current in X and the potential difference across Z, okay. So again, this isn't too challenging of a question. The answer was F, which I think a few people put. So if we have a look at understanding why it's F, right. So if the key thing with this is to understand that current will take the path of least resistance. That's the fact that you need to retain. So once you know that fact, you need to apply it to this unfamiliar scenario here where you've got resistors and switches opening and maths. So when we close the switch, all of the currents will avoid resistor Y because there's no point going down another branch because there's just more resistance there. So when we close the switch, nothing is going to go to Y. They're both going to go to X and Z, okay? So current will only flow to X and Z, and we know from the battery that we're going to supply 12 volts. So 12 volts will be supplied to X, and 12 volts will be supplied to Z. When we open the switch, that's where things are a bit different. So you should know that voltage equals current times resistance. So if we rearrange for the resistance is 12 because we have 12 volts, which is constantly supplied, divided by the current, which is 0.02. Again, that's the microamps, you just convert that to amps, so 20, 0.02, just a bit of conversion there, we get the resistance, which is 0.6 times 10 to the power 3 ohms, right? I know there are 3 resistors, X, Y, and Z, so I know that each resistor will get 0.2. That's just 0.6 divided by 3, so 0.2 to each resistor. Brilliant. That's when I have the switch open. However, when I close the switch, again, it's going back to that concept of taking the path of least resistance. I know when I close the switch, it's only going to go to X and Z. So in that case, I only have 2 resistors in function, not 3 resistors. So for the 2 resistors, I know that the ohm for one resistor is 0.2, so I times that by 2 to get 0.4. I rearrange the formula to get the current, because that's what the question is asking me. So I is 12 volts constantly supplied divided by 0.4 times 10 to the power 3. So that will give you the current. And then we know that the voltage was 12, so we know that we have 2 resistors, so we're going to spread the voltage equally out to both of them. So 12 divided by 2 to get 6. Therefore, the current will be 30 and the voltage will be 6. Okay, so quite a lot that I've just blurred at you, but if you break it down, very, very simple. It's just some basic maths and understanding that current takes the path of least resistance. Right, fantastic. So we're now going to move on to some information on the essay section. So obviously this year it's been changed in that the essay will be online, and you will have a word limit. I think it's 550 words because you're going to have to type it. So a good idea is to get used to typing the essay at this point. Okay, so let's have a quick overview of what the essay is like. So it's a short essay, one side of A4 generally, but now it'll be 550 words on the sort of word processor. You have a choice of 3. Please pick one. Don't do all 3. Someone in my school once actually did all 3. And they didn't get more marks for it and did very bad in the one that they marked. So only do one of the essays. You have 30 minutes to answer your essay. Each essay question, you basically get a statement. Now, these can be scientific or medical, but most often they're not. They can be quite weird or they can be quite philosophical. But the point with the essay is to show individualism. So it's not, I don't want to sit here and go, right, you need to do this in introduction, this in your main body, this in your conclusion. No, the point is you need to craft the essay in your specific style. And the more individualistic you are, the higher your marks will be. So I am going to tell you how to craft an essay, but I'm not going to tell you the structure of the essay. I'm not going to say, right, you need to have this point in introduction, have one paragraph here, one paragraph there. It's a good idea to have introduction, main body, how many paragraphs you want, that's fine, and then a conclusion. That's just basic essay structure. But the point with the essay is you need to craft it in this way here. So these are the 3 things you need to consider when addressing the quote in question. So you be given I'm going to quote,
Rehaan?
what do I do? I
Okay.
need the I presented, and what the meaning of this is, yeah? Sorry, go on.
No, you just cut off a bit there, that's why.
Oh, did I cut off? Oh, okay, sorry, I
Yeah.
thought you were going to say something. It was okay now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Okay, brilliant. So, again, you say explain the item proposed. Then the second thing you need to do is produce a counter argument. So you've sort of argued for the statement and then argue against. So look at the opposite side and offer sort of an alternative reasoning to it. And then the third part is reconciliation of the two sides. So you've done your for or your positives, you've done your against or your negatives, and then you bring both sides together and you offer some form of resolution or reconciliation. Now, the other key thing is that throughout the essay, you need to have one constant thread running through where you're using your own judgment to address the question. So often the best essays won't directly say, yes, I agree, or no, I disagree. They'll say, here are the reasons to agree, here are the reasons to disagree, here's how they could both be there. However, alternatively, I think something else. And if you can manage to drum something like that, you will definitely score a very, very high mark in the essay. So try and go around that way of approaching the essay. That's the best way to do this. So here, these are just sort of like some connectives and so on that you can use to try and be more concise and spice up your essay. Very important as well because you'll be typing them, so it's best to be concise so you don't use all your words up. There's an advantage to typing them, I guess, because you can edit the different questions. You can go back, you can edit what you're writing rather than have to cross out. But this is a good slide to have just to spice up your language. Right, so it's always good to start off with a powerful introduction. So here I've written an introduction to a statement that I've made. So the statement is, the ability to repent is an expression of free will. So that can sound a bit convoluted and weirdly philosophical. But let's have a look at what I wrote for this. So repentance may be represented as an expression of free will, something that God omnipotently instills in humans. Repenting in itself is an act of choice in order to please a demiurge figure. However, free will may also lie in the rejection of heavenly power and man's ability to not repent by choosing sin instead of God. Ultimately, free will is a question of choice. So this is a really good, powerful introduction because it lays out the foundations of my essay and it covers all those three aspects I said before: explaining the item, an alternative argument, reconciling them, and then also bringing my own argument in throughout. And I've just done that in the intro. So if you look at the first part, I've immediately engaged with the quote. I've used the words in the quote. Do that. Use the words in the quote in your first line because it shows you're engaging. So I've used repent, I've used expression, I've used free will. So I've showed that I understand and I dissect the words and I'm using them. Here I've referenced God, showing this is my idea, that I'm taking a religious route in my essay. I'm going to talk about God and bring that in. And then I've also used God in sort of speech marks to show that everyone has different definitions and understanding of what God represents, and that's something that I'll discuss later on. So I've done the first part, explaining the item proposed. In the next part, again, I've carried on discussing and I've continued with the theme of God. So I've linked both parts, so with demiurge figure. And now I've sort of discussed repentance being a choice, and I've linked back to the quote, and I've explained the item proposed. Then I've presented a counter argument because I've said, however, free will may also lie within the rejection of heavenly truth. And then at the end, I've sort of reconciled both parts of it and brought my own judgment because I'm saying that free will is a question of choice. So that shows that that's what that's my idea and that's what I'm doing ultimately. I think there's some questions going on in the chat. Is there a question or something? Is someone asking what I got? No? It's all right.
Yeah, people are asking what you got, but we can just cover that in the Q&A at the end.
Yeah, that's fine. I got 5A, so I got like the highest mark for this thing, so it wasn't too bad, hopefully. So hopefully I know what I'm on about for this part. Right, okay, sorry, let me continue. Right, so again here I've made a bit of a checklist of what needs to be covered. So intro, body, conclusion, and line of argument constantly passing through. It's a good idea to plan for a range of different positives and negatives for a range of different statements. So look at the different essays, write some essay skeletons and so on forth, and then see. It's a good idea to write concisely and also clearly, because the thing with the third section is that time isn't an issue. What the issue is writing concisely within that time, not writing too much. And that was definitely like my biggest struggle when I was doing this. So the official guidance is just rehashing everything I talked about. It's just telling you the time. So feel free to read this in your own time. Again, it's all about giving you a statement and you working through that. And again, analyze different opinions, do a lot of wider reading, bring some arguments in, some debate, do a lot of reading. I did a lot of reading on like ethics and philosophy and so on, which was very, very useful for this part. Again, they have the sample answers, they have these sample papers that you can work with to get a range of titles. Okay, so how do we actually go about answering a question? So this is the method to dissect and attempt the essay. So you've got 3 statements, right? You pick one of the statements, okay? Don't pick all 3, pick one. And then, as I said before, you dissect the statement that's been provided and look at the words and so on. And you brainstorm sort of ideas. So what originally comes in your mind when you sort of go about with this? Then draw a list of for and against arguments, as I discussed before. So explain the item and then produce a counter argument. Then write a quick plan, just a quick 1-minute plan. Aim for 3 or 4 paragraphs ideally. Nice, concise, tightly written paragraphs. Again, think about what's your thread that's going to run through, what you're going to act as your hook. For the repentance question, my thread was free will being a choice, and that was my own judgment and my own argument that I brought in. So try to think of something and bring that in and put that in introduction. Answer every part of the question. You can't just focus on repentance. You have to look at free will, like with that question. And obviously proofread at the end. You don't want to lose marks for something as silly as like spelling errors and so on. So top tips, plan as much as you can. Create lots of essay skeletons. Next thing is that verbosity hinders clarity. There's no point being incredibly superfluous and using so many flowery words when no one will know what you're saying. Be clear and concise. And people often think that the longer that I can write a sentence, the more complex it is and the more intelligent I sound. Not at all. You just sound stupid, if anything. I use just a lot of, like, if you look at my introduction, I was saying a lot of, I guess, deep things, but I only, like, my lines were what, 5-6 words long, my sentences. It's about having short, clear, concise sentences, ultimately, and craft each sentence well. So you need to think, right, what am I writing for each sentence, and is it worthwhile writing this? Because you have such a limit on your word count, so you really need to make sure every sentence counts and every sentence adds something to your essay. If it doesn't, there's no point having it. And again, have your clear line of argument, use your own judgment, and 550 words is what you need to have. Right, so top tips for this section is that you can use the OCR A-level critical thinking papers 2 and 3, because they actually have some essay questions there. So they've got some statements that you can think about, and they've also got mark schemes that you can look through to get some ideas. So we gave you this essay at the start, and it was in like the pre-webinar. So we're going to give you about a minute or 2 now, just to have a look at this again. Think about what I've talked about, explain the item, counter argument, reconcile your own judgment, and just write some ideas in the chat. Okay? So if you want to have a look at the chat and see what's happening, Charms. Anyone? So any ideas anyone's got, just write something in. We'll just give you a minute for that.
So far, nothing's coming in yet. Does anyone have like any topics that they would want to discuss if they were given this question? There you go. Okay, we've got 1 in.
Okay, what is that?
So we've got euthanasia.
Yeah, that's good. Brilliant. Euthanasia is a brilliant argument to sort of go down. Any other ideas? It'll be useful. The more you engage, the more you can get.
So someone said NHS core values of care and compassion. This includes in palliative care, so patient can die dignified in the manner that they want to.
Fantastic. That's quite
palliative
good,
care, religion, Jehovah.
That's quite good, yeah. Because Jehovah's Witnesses, you can't do blood transplants and stuff like that. They often ask that as a scenario in interviews.
The patient will eventually lose control of their body and will need to rely on others. Do not resuscitate.
Brilliant. That's good, yeah.
Giving false hope to the patient and the family.
And somebody's written in the Q&A, palliative care, euthanasia, personal beliefs.
Fantastic. Personal beliefs is good. Hippocratic Oath is a good one as well, because you can bring a lot of like wider philosophy into that and take this into another route, which would be quite individual and creative.
We've got humanizing palliative care, making it less medical. That's really good as well. Having to rely on hospice care is expensive and adds stress to everyone. And difficult conversations, maybe organ donation. The patient has the right to die with dignity.
Brilliant. Right, some good ideas there. Right, so these are some ideas that I drew up. So for positives and negatives, again, you've thought of a lot more, which is quite good as well. So euthanasia or passive euthanasia more specifically, DNR, so do not attempt resuscitation, we prevent suffering. Again, it's sort of like there's cost with supporting patient and the strain of the NHS. You can make it quite a political essay if you want. Again, arguments against ethical, legal, moral issues, the mental capacity of patients. You could bring in the idea of the Mental Capacity Act and think about family members, again, think about that. And there's always the hope of recovery, or you want to assume there is a hope of recovery anyway. Okay, fab. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do a post-webinar mini mock, right? So thank you for paying attention for our ramblings for the first 3 parts. So now hopefully you will have learned something, and then we'll see how you do. So we're going to have our answers on the Zoom poll, which I know will be running. So if we start off, you're going to get 1 minute for these questions. So take some time to read it and then answer the questions.
Time is up, and most people answered E, Anna.
Okay, interesting. Right, let's have a look at explaining this. So the answer is actually C, Mayuri. What I'll do is I'll annotate it and then I can explain how to get about there. So let's have a look at the question. 6 people are running a 100-meter race, right? Rehaan, oh me, Charles, Mayuri, Brian, Anna, Amy. 3 people reached the finish line in between the 2 runners whose name began with A. Now this line is very, very important because this lays out the order you need to put the races in. So the first instance in which it could be organized is that it could be, right, sorry, 1 second, let me take the pointer off. So it could be one of the A's first. It decides to let me write, there we go. So it could be 1A there, and then 1, 2, 3, and the second A. Right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then another one there. Or alternatively, the order could be blank, A, blank, blank, blank. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then A. So it's either one of these 2. Now you need to basically work out, is it this one or is it this one here? So let's carry on reading. Charms got the bronze medal, right? So if Charms got the bronze medal, that means that Charms must be 3rd, obviously. So 1, 2, 3, right? Charms will be here. 1, 2, 3, okay, Charms can be here. So it can still be either of these 2. Now this is the most important statement here. Brian came last. Brian can't come last if there's an A here. So it can't be this one because Brian has to be last here. Brian came last. Rehaan was disappointed that he didn't beat his longtime rival Charms. So if Rehaan didn't beat Charms, Rehaan must come after Charms. So Rehaan has to be here. And then Anna beat Brian, but not Rehaan. So if Anna beat Brian, this means that this A here must be Anna because she beat Brian, but not Rehaan. So that means that the first A is Amy. And the only one that's left is Mayuri. So that must mean that the answer is C, Mayuri. Yeah? Is that okay? Great. Let's move on to the next question. Right, so try this one. I'll give you another minute. The poll comes up too quick, I'm not able to read. You might be able to minimize the poll so you can still see the questions. Try that. Are we running the poll on it? Yeah, we are. Just minimize the poll and you can still see the questions. We are being tight on time here. Right, interesting. C, right. So I was expecting, interesting. Okay, that's quite cool. Right, so let's have a look at this question here. So metastatic melanoma. So again, this is an example of a question where it's just a very, very BMAT question, because I'm convinced none of you will have either heard of metastatic melanoma or definitely not learnt about it in A level or AS level even. But the point is, this question is about cancer and it's about immune systems, which you have learned because they're topics. So metastatic melanoma is a type of skin cancer. It's caused by a faulty receptor protein on cell surface membranes. There have been no very effective treatments for this cancer. Cells in tumors can be destroyed by the immune system, okay? So it's skin cancer, it's got a faulty receptor protein, no treatments, immune system. Which statement best explains how tumor cells are destroyed by the immune system? Okay, so let's have a look at this. So the answer is in fact B, okay? Let's try and explain why it's this. Let me move along. So first of all, let's have a look at why it's not A or D. So A states that the proliferation of TH cells allows for B cells to become phagocytic. That's incorrect. Proliferation of T cells does not allow the B cells to become phagocytic because the B cells are intrinsically already phagocytic. These cells are phagocytes. So T cells dividing does not contribute to that, so it can't be A at all. Why is it not B? TH cells bind to B cells, stimulating clonal selection of T cells, leading to antibody production, destroying cells. Now that's incorrect because when T cells, they do bind to B cell receptors, but they don't stimulate the clonal selection of T cells. They stimulate clonal selection of B cells, okay? So careful reading with this one. It is quite a challenging question, so it's not A or D. Now, it's hard, I guess, to distinguish between B and C, and the answer is B. So let's have a look at why it's B. So B plasma cells will secrete cytokines to modulate inflammatory responses, inducing damage, whereas C states that TH cells bind to faulty receptors on cells, which act as antigens, directly stimulating clonal selection of B cells. C sounds like the most correct answer, but careful reading here. TH cells bind to faulty receptors on cells. That's incorrect. What will happen is the B cell, as a phagocyte, will engulf the faulty proteins, present them on their membrane, become an antigen-presenting cell, presenting the faulty proteins as antigens for the TH cells to bind to. So the TH cells are going to bind to the B cell membrane, which has the antigens on it, not the receptors directly, so it can't be C. Therefore, the answer is B. B might not seem like the best answer, but it's the most correct answer, given everything else is slightly incorrect. So B is the answer. Cytokines, inflammation, damage. Okay? Right, so we'll try this question, so you've got another minute. Right, so if you can't see the question, just feel free to minimize the poll. We are rushing you a bit on the time. Right, okay, so the answer is between B and C. Right, so this, I guess, can be a hard question because there's quite a bit of maths to do, and you've got to do the maths. We gave you very little time, but BMAT is tight for time, especially for this section. 30 minutes for 30 minutes for 27 questions is not a long time, especially for questions as hard as this. So sorry about the tight time constraints. But we are trying to keep you on your toes here. Now, the challenge with this question is the maths you need to do. So the answer is actually D, okay, which I don't think many people put, right? So if we try and have a look at understanding why it's D, I'll try and draw a little picture to help. So the cells of a developing fetus divide by mitosis to give 2 daughter cells every 8 hours, okay? And that the volume of each cell is this here. Calculate the total volume of all the cells after 3 days in centimeters cubed and give your answer to an appropriate number of significant figures. Right, so with the BMAT, there is no calculator, but you will be expected to do some level of maths that requires some thinking, but nothing that can't, it's not impossible maths. It just takes a bit of time and you need to get quicker at the maths. One thing I did for the BMAT is I learned all my 2 to the powers of, I learned up to 2 to the power of 20, just to, sounds a bit extreme, but it did help a lot. So for this question, so we've got the cell developing fetus, it's going to split, right? And then when it splits every 8 hours, we're going to get 2 daughter cells, right? Now you can be here for ages and go all the way down to 3 days, but there's no point doing that. Just working out in terms of how many divisions there'll be in a day. So 2 daughter cells every 8 hours, 1 day is 3 divisions, right? Because 8, 16, 24. 24 hours in a day, 8 hours, 8 times 3 is 24. Nothing difficult there. 3 days is what the questions say, so I know that it'll be 9 divisions, obviously. Now I need to do 2 to the power of 9. It's not too challenging to do 2 to the power of 9 in your head, but again, you have working out paper you can do. But I suggest learning the powers. Maybe not up to 20, maybe up to 10, but it will help you make you quicker at questions like this. So 2 to the power of 9 is 512, so you know that there's 512 cells. You know the volume of each cell is that, so you just need to times. Again, this isn't too hard to do. 2.03 times 10 to the minus 4 times 512 isn't that hard. If you just do 203 times 512, it's just 3 digit by 3 digit, and then put the decimal point in and account for the power of 10. That's not too hard. Remember, you need to convert it from micrometers cubed to centimeters cubed. That's just times by 10,000, which again is just move the decimal point, and there's your answer, 1039.36. Okay, so the point of this is no calculator will be given in the BMAT. You need to be quick at maths. Right, so moving on to the next question. So here's an essay question. So just read through this and then feel free to use the chat to redress some responses. So morality and mortality are inextricably linked. Have a look at what I've talked about, explain the item, produce a counter argument, reconcile, and use your own judgment. Okay, so we have about 2 minutes for this.
And please don't use the Q&A function, use the chat function, so I'm able to read the answers from there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Charms says Solly had to leave us, but thank you very much, Charms, for being here. Appreciate your efforts. Okay, we've got some ideas. Religious beliefs of leading a good life. Good, yep. So this is again quite intrinsically a philosophical essay. You could make it into a medical essay as well, as in terms of being a doctor. Reincarnation is a good idea as well. Any other ideas?
Somebody mentioning the Hippocratic Oath.
Mm-hmm. So what specifically about the Hippocratic Oath would you bring in? Because Hippocratic Oath is something that doctors will take to ensure the beneficence of their patients. So how would you link this to this? Good, moral decisions, brilliant, exactly. So it's about death and dying. So I guess is that where you're saying Hippocratic Oath, you can bring in that doctors have a duty of care. Yep, so you can go down that route, that's completely fine as well.
Some people are also linking it with the medical ethical pillars like beneficence, saving patients. Considering moral principles when it comes to saving patients, repentance and the afterlife, everyone has the right to die. Our morals could be based on the fact that we are mortal and we have to live a peaceful life. Mortality, it's unpreventable. You may be able to argue about the immorality of alcoholism and the medical repercussions that occur. Your good morals can give you mortality in a second life, heaven.
Fantastic. You have some really good ideas. Well done. This can seem like quite a hard essay as well. Sometimes the morality is not the one to be brilliant. So many great answers. Religious beliefs, be bringing God into fantastic. Yeah, good. So some really, really good answers here about God. It's basically bridging the gap between religion and medicine effectively at the heart of this essay. Some ideas that I thought of were arguing for, so again, explain the item proposed, is that your morals and your ethics and the way you live life will influence your experience of life and therefore how long you live. The healthier sort of relationships you have with life, the healthier you will live. You can bring religion to that because you can talk about things like spirituality, karma, deeds, and so on. There is a relationship between sort of aging and then dying. And then palliative care, you can bring in the DNR someone mentioned about, you can bring Hippocratic Oath into their ethics of care, so bring all the ethics stuff into this. Arguing against, on the other hand, so remember, you've always got to give a counter argument as well. So morals of life will not necessarily influence how long you live. So an organic pathology will not be linked to your morals. If you develop cancer, the cancer itself will not know whether you're a good or a bad person. Anyone can get cancer regardless of whether they're a brilliant saint or whether they're, horrible person to people. That doesn't matter. An organic pathology is organic in nature. People will also have different perceptions of morals and morality, and their way of thinking in life will be different. You can talk about nihilism, for example. People could be nihilistic in life, and that's just their way of thinking. But does that necessarily mean that they are immoral or amoral? No, it's just their perception because they have that form of thinking. And that links to everyone having different forms of ethics and so on. And you can make a statement about how mortality is just about time and morality is about thought. So why do we have to link the two? Okay, there's lots of different really good ideas that you can say that you guys brought into the chat as well. So that sounds really, really good. So thank you. Right, and that thankfully concludes our webinar. So thank you so much for listening. I'm really impressed with the amount that everyone engaged. Thank you to Charms as well. So I had to leave for doing everything on section 1. And now this is open to you guys for a quick Q&A portion. If you have any questions you want to ask, feel free to either put them in the chat or use the Q&A function.
So yeah, when will we receive the certificates that just filled in the questionnaire? Depending on how many people fill the questionnaires, we might take our time. If there's like 80 people wanting a certificate, but fret not, you will receive it maximum in the next week. I will make them, so don't worry, I will keep my word. Somebody is asking if we did the UCAT too. I only did the UCAT, and Rehaan and Charms did both BMAT and UCAT, which I think was called UKCAT when we actually applied. They both now are in UKCAT schools, but were very successful in their BMAT as well. When do we attend the BMAT test? Rehaan, would you like to answer this?
So the BMAT will be in November, and then there's another sitting if you can't make it in February, I think. I was looking on their website. There was a sitting previously in September, but November is, I'm assuming, the one that you will all be sitting. Will we do a webinar for the UCAT? No, because the UCAT dates have gone, sadly, but hopefully that's what we can do next year. What's the difference in BMAT and UCAT? Well, that's a big question. There's a lot of differences. They both effectively they're entrance exams, and they assess. Unis will use it as a filter ultimately, but there are a lot of differences. So I recommend looking online for that. When you mentioned, sorry, I should be clicking that I've done these answers. When you mentioned doing wider reading about philosophy for the ethics section, what resources did I use? Right, well, I have read a lot of like Greek philosophy books. I was really into that when I was like younger. In terms of I'm starting to think there's like Beauchamp and Childress. They have really good books on medical ethics, which is quite good. There's a range of different philosophy books to read. You can read things for religion. I looked at John Milton's Paradise Lost, which you can do. Again, these are very, very like hard. Like you don't have to do any of these. No, don't feel like right. I've got to make a massive list and go read all these 900-page books. Don't have to do them. I just did them because I was weird. but there's lots of different books again you can look at, like classical Greek philosophy, like Sappho and Plato's Hippocrates and all that, and their sort of ways of life and approaches to that. Did you have to do BMAT if you don't want to go to uni like Oxbridge? It doesn't have to be for Oxbridge, because a lot of other unis will do BMAT as well, like Leeds, for example.
At the same time, if you think you only want to focus on the UK CAT, now called UCAT, you can also just apply to UCAT universities. Generally, what people do is that if they feel like writing 2 tests, they will apply to 2 schools and 2 schools just to maximize their chances of getting in. Because if you mess up in one of the exams, you still have, you know, the chance to make it up with another entrance exam and still putting your hopes into schools. I think that would be a reasonable thing to do.
Exactly.
Somebody asking us if there's any free work experiences, resources. Likely you came to the right place, because we will offer free work experiences. So sign up for In2MedSchool. Some people
questions
asking,
in the chat as well.
Yeah,
sorry,
will they get extra time in BMAT if they get it in their normal exams? I believe so.
Yeah, you can put in, you can tell your school to put in some circumstances.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to use personal experience in the essay, or is that poor academic writing? So by personal experience, do you mean like voluntary work? I mean, if you want to do that in terms of you want to make that your creative flair, I guess you can do, as long as you make it fruitful. It doesn't have to be, you know, some deep, profound philosophical piece, but whatever just sounds decently. I'm struggling with structuring revision for BMAT. How long I've got and revised science, I'm not sure how to go to school because I seem to stand still. Don't worry if you feel like, you know, you're not improving. It does take time. You've got to just keep doing papers. You've done all the content, which is brilliant. So now you're at the stage where you just need to keep practicing questions, and that just takes time and commitment. Do you think the BMAT being online is easier? I don't think it makes a difference ultimately whether it's online, because it's the same content effectively. It might make the essay a bit easier because you can have you can read and like edit and sort of backspace and so on, rather than having to cross out, and you're already limiting yourself there. Oh God, there's a lot of questions I'm trying to look through. Do you prefer UK CAT or BMAT? Personally, I prefer the BMAT because I'm quite good at science and I like the science stuff. Does Leeds have a BMAT cutoff score, and is the score used in your interview? Probably. Nearly all Leeds have some cutoff score. About Leeds specifically, something I forgot to mention is that a lot of the people who picked Leeds Uni for their interview, one of the stations gave them, so this is the past 2 years they've at least done this for a fact, is that they gave them their essay, a copy of their essay, and they went, right, read through the essay you wrote and evaluate the essay and tell us what you do better and what you change next time. So if you do pick Leeds, make sure you try and remember what your essay was and be able to reflect on the essay. When did you start your revision? I started around August. Answer live.
I think everybody is like, many people are asking what to do because they only have like 2 weeks left and they don't really know how to organize a revision timetable. So maybe many of these questions will all be answered at the same time. But Rehaan, hopefully.
Yeah, so I understand, right? 2 weeks left, and then you're probably very stressed because it is quite a hard exam. But 2 weeks is still longer than you think. It is a long time. And in 2 weeks, the number of exam questions and past papers you can do is monumental. So don't worry that you've left it too late. You've never left it too late, unless it's the night before and you haven't done anything. But it doesn't matter. 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 days, just use the time you have. And don't worry. The more you stress, oh no, I'm not going to do well. You need to personally have a positive state of mind, right? And then once you've got that in your mind, then you'll be able to do fine. So don't worry, you'll be fine. 1 second, sorry. Right, what else did we have?
Some people are asking, if you do badly in the BMAT and apply to UCAT unis, will they look at your BMAT? No, that's the point of having 2 different entrance tests. The BMAT unis only look at your BMAT, and the UCAT unis only look at your UCAT. They don't have access to your scores. So please don't be put off by that.
Fantastic, yeah. What do you think is the main reason that the majority of people don't receive high scores section 1, section 2? To be brutally honest, it's just hard. Yeah, the questions are hard, that's why. And you're not expected to do incredibly amazing. Some people will, and the higher you do, the better. If you want to apply to places like Oxbridge, you should try and aim for, you know, around the 7 region, which is what some of the applicants get. But don't worry, you know, the majority of people will get between 4 and 6 because it is hard. That's why people don't do that well. It's not an easy test. Which exam boards you see books are good to study? Honestly, any really. OCR, the more. the more different variety you look at, the better, because they'll probably explain things in different ways. They'll have different questions, OCR, AQA, Excel, all the different exam boards. Done. I haven't done physics GCSE. Are there any resources to help me learn the bits necessary for the BMAT on my own? Right, if you haven't done physics GCSE, that's fine. There are a lot of resources online that you can use. We are going to be uploading some resources to the website as well in the coming sort of week or so, which you can use. But go on YouTube, look at the specification for physics, look at the topics, and just go on YouTube. There's so many free science lessons. Is really, really good because he makes really concise 3-minute videos. I keep promoting him, but he was my chemistry teacher at school, and he's brilliant at making all these videos. So watch his videos; they are quite good because they really sort of give you a baseline understanding of it. And even if you haven't done physics GCSE and that's your weak point, don't worry, because you'll probably have a maximum of 8 physics questions. And again, if you're unsure, make an educated guess, right? So don't stress too much.
I don't think we should accept any more questions. Thank you so much, guys, for the engagement. Please feel free to DM us or ask us for a mentor, because then you will be able to ask all of these beautiful questions to a mentor. I think some particular points that should be addressed are, 1, if you want to do medicine, do you have to write the BMAT or UCAT, or can you do medicine without an exam? Unfortunately not. If you want to study in the United Kingdom, undergraduate level, you need to sit BMAT or UCAT, and at graduate level, you need to sit the GAMSAT. Somebody, if you get good A levels and don't pass the admission tests, can you still go to uni? These tests aren't really pass or fail. They give you a score that gets taken into consideration together with many other factors, like your personal statement, your GCSEs, your A-level prediction. You can understand what your strengths are like by looking at your stats and apply to schools that consider your best stats more. So if you've gotten all A stars at GCSEs, super well done, apply to GCSE heavy unis. If instead you feel like you're more comfortable with your UCAT score, then apply to UCAT score unis, so you can really make the most of your application to medical school. Do you have any essay plans which you could share with us? I don't really think it's ethical for us to share the things we revised with, but you can definitely find so many resources online and also on our website, In2MedSchool, or on our Instagram. Yeah, and I think that's all of it. Thank you so much, guys, for engaging. There's also Brian here, our president, if he wants to say something.
Just a really quick thing. So yeah, thank you to everyone who's joined, and thank you to the speakers. I think the really quick take home message is the BMAT and the UCAT are not the be all and end all of your application. So don't worry about it. Okay, it's about really showing yourself in your best light. You've got all the other bits like your GCSEs, your result, your other extracurricular activities, your personal statements, etc. So don't worry too much about it. Okay, I really flunked in the BMAT and I still went to a good university. Okay, Rehaan mentioned there's lots and lots of things out there, resources out there, which are fantastic, but don't worry too much about reading tons and tons of stuff. I mean, for myself, the only book I read, I think I just had a quick Amazon look now, it's called Medical Ethics, a very short intro. And when they say very short intro, it's very short, and it's on paperback, it's £2.16 on Amazon. So, and that just so you don't need tons and tons of resources. Okay, but anyway, in the meantime, so this was our first event. We'll have plenty of events coming up. We've got the mentoring scheme. So to those who don't know, you'll be paired one-to-one with a medical student or a junior doctor in the UK. So please do sign up to that. The link will be put up on our Instagram, but the sign-up form is also available at the moment on our website, www.in2medschool.com. Okay, so it's the number 2 there, and over the year we'll put more resources and stuff on there. Okay.
And for everything you take part in, you will get a certificate. Many people are asking, what is the relevance of a certificate? It's just a way to prove that before medical school, you're really preparing and engaging with all the resources that are out there. in medical school, you will then learn that certificates are very important, and medical students kind of collect them for everything they do. So please come and tell your friends if you think you found this useful to join us as well, because there's space for everybody and we have many, many mentors. So yeah.
Yeah, and there's a sign up link at the bottom there, so please feel free to visit our website. It's just In2MedSchool.com. And just thank you very much for paying attention and engaging. Sorry, it was a lot and I did talk for a long time, but I hope you found it useful. So thank you very much.
And thank you so much, guys. We will now log off. Bye-bye.
Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.